You know, some of the most successful people out there share a secret feeling, one they almost never talk about. It's that little nagging voice of self-doubt that just pops up, even when on paper everything looks like a massive win.
Yeah, it's that feeling, right? That deep down fear that you're not actually the person everyone thinks you are. And it usually sounds a little something like this.
You could be in the middle of a huge presentation or finishing a project you've poured your heart into, and boom, that thought just shows up, totally uninvited. So you get some praise, you absolutely crush a goal, you get that top grade, but instead of feeling proud, you immediately write it off.
Nah, that wasn't skill. That was just a fluke, right? Pure luck.
And this is the real kicker, isn't it? The feeling that you're kind of living on borrowed time, and that any minute now you'll make one tiny mistake and everyone will finally see you for the fraud you feel like. Well, this whole bundle of feelings actually has a name.
All right, so let's put a name to this feeling. We're talking about imposter syndrome.
And the key thing to get here is that it persists despite clear, hard evidence that you're successful. The term itself was actually coined back in the 70s by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And while they first noticed it in high-achieving women, we now know it affects a huge number of people. Something like 70% of us will feel this at some point.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Kind of ironic, actually. This isn't a problem for people who are unqualified. Oh no, it almost exclusively targets people who are capable, conscientious, and successful. The very thing that makes you so good at what you do is also what's fueling the doubt.
And, we tend to see it show up more in certain situations. It loves competitive fields or times when you're starting something new, like a new job. And it's especially common for people who might already feel like a bit of an outsider in their environment for whatever reason.
Okay, but here's the thing. This feeling isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Psychologist Dr. Valerie Young actually identified 5 different ways it tends to show up. So as we go through these, just ask yourself, does any of this sound a little too familiar?
First up, we've got the perfectionist. For this person, 99% just isn't gonna cut it. Success isn't about doing a great job, it's about doing a flawless job, every single time.
Think about it. They could hit 99% of their goal. But what do they focus on? That tiny 1% that wasn't absolutely perfect. And they use that as proof that they failed. And since perfection is, well, impossible, they never really get to feel that sense of accomplishment.
Next, we have the expert. This person doesn't feel like a fraud because they lack skill. They feel like a fraud because they don't know every single thing about a topic.
They're the ones constantly getting more certifications, more training, but it's a trap. Because the more they learn, the more they realize how much they don't know, and that just makes the imposter feeling even stronger. Then there's the natural genius. For this person, their whole sense of self is built on the idea that they're naturally gifted, that things should come to them easily and quickly. So for this person, having to actually try hard feels wrong. It's not part of the process. It's a big, flashing sign of failure. If they don't get it right on the first attempt, they take it as proof that they don't have what it takes.
Our fourth type is the soloist. This is the person who is convinced that to be truly competent, you have to do everything all by yourself.
For them, asking for help? Nope, not gonna happen. That's like waving a big flag that says, I failed. They measure their value by what they alone can produce, so working with others can actually feel like a personal weakness. And finally, we have the superhuman. This person is under immense pressure, usually from themselves, to be amazing at every single part of their life. The perfect professional, the perfect parent, the perfect partner, the perfect friend, all at once.
So when they inevitably find it impossible to juggle everything without dropping a single ball, they don't think, wow, I'm taking on way too much. They think, I'm just not good enough.
So you might be wondering, why is this feeling so sticky? Why does it just hang around? Well, it's because imposter syndrome works in this really clever self-reinforcing loop. Let's break down how that actually works.
It all starts when a new challenge comes up and immediately you feel anxious. So you react in one of 2 ways. You either over-prepare like crazy or you procrastinate. Either way, you get the thing done and you succeed. But here's the key. You don't give your talent any credit. You tell yourself, I only pulled that off because I worked twice as hard as anyone, or, phew, I just got really lucky. So, because you explain away the success, that core belief that you're a fraud, it stays completely intact, just waiting for the next challenge to start the cycle all over again.
But what if we've been looking at this whole thing the wrong way? I mean, this is the most powerful takeaway of all.
What if this feeling isn't a flaw? What if it's actually a sign of something really positive?
This right here, this is the reframe that changes everything. That voice in your head that says, I don't belong here, when you're facing something new, that's just your brain's misinterpretation. The reality, the empowering reality, is that you're learning, you're growing. That feeling of discomfort isn't proof that you're a fraud. It's the feeling of you stepping outside your comfort zone. It's the feeling of growth itself.
So I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. What if that feeling of being an imposter isn't a bug? What if it's a feature, a sign that you are leveling up, pushing your own boundaries, and doing something right, that you're exactly where you need to be? What would change for you if you started to see it that way?